This is a short video to go along with Chapter 2. It is a sequential structure, which means that all statements will start at the top of the program, execute one after the other down to the bottom of the program. We're going to create a program that allows the user to enter their first name, last name, their major, and their GPA. And then we're just going to turn around and output the information to the console with the name on one line and a blank space between the first and last name, and the major and GPA on the second line. And we have to be careful that we do actually label all of the output so the user looking at the console will know what they're looking at. So the first thing I need to do is to start a new project. And I do want a Win32 console application. I'm going to call this particular one Chapter 2 Video and store it in the appropriate file on my computer in the appropriate folder for my videos. And then you have to click Application Settings, Empty Project, and then we click Finish. That gives us our project file, but now we have to add the .cpp file so we can actually create the code. That's found here under New Item, and it is a CPP file, .cpp extension, a C++ file. Typically I name this main because all C programs have to have a function main. So I'm going to call it main and add it, which gives me my edit window, and I'm ready to start actually putting the code in. At the top, of course, come my header files or the libraries that I need to perform the tasks in this program. The first one is IOStream, which gives us access to the standard input and output streams as well as cout and cin. Then I'm also going to have some strings in this program, so I need to include the header string. The next thing is to determine the namespace. In this semester we'll always use the same one. That's the standard, or STD, and that's a C statement, so it must have a semicolon at the end. Now I'm ready to actually start my main function. It is of type integer. It's called main. That's required. It doesn't have any parameters, so it's just an open and close parentheses and then a curly brace to actually start main, the block of code for main. And the first thing we typically do is to declare our variables. So string first for the first name, last for the last name, and major for our major. Remember that variable names must start with a letter and can contain no blank spaces. On the next line, I'm going to have one variable for my GPA, and that is going to be of type double because it is a real number that'll have a decimal position, and I'm going to call it GPA. Now I'm ready to start prompting the user to enter in their information, and I want to clearly tell them what to do. So enter your first name, and I'm going to put a space, an extra space here between the colon and the closing quote, only because I want the cursor to be flashing one space past the end of that, and then I have to read in the information. So CN, and I'm reading in the first name. Then the next prompt is to enter the last name, and the literal string of the prompt must be enclosed in quotes. So it looks very similar. And again, I'm going to CN, but the variable that I'm reading from the keyboard this time is last. And now I'm ready for the major, so another cout to prompt the user using a literal string to enter the major. And then read that variable into storage. And the last one is for the prompt here for your GPA. And get it from the input stream using the CN and insertion operator, GPA. So we have declared our variables at the very top, then we've asked for input, and the next thing typically is that we would do any processing required for the program. This one really doesn't have any processing, and the last step is your output statements, and that really is all we're doing in this particular program. So I'm ready to set up my output based on the specifications given in the program, and the actual source code for the program is found in the video folder on Blackboard, so you have access to that as well as this video. So I want to see out, and I do want a blank line between my input and output, so I'm going to use the escape sequence \n, and I'm going to label this student name, again using a literal string for labeling purposes, and then I'm going to put a tab, which is 5 characters, between that and the actual printing of the name. So the first name that I want, the first variable that I want to print is the first name, which is stored in first. Then I need a single blank space between my first and last name for readability. So now last, and then I do want a line feed on the end, so I use the indel to add a line feed on the end. The second line, similar. I don't need a line feed because I just did one, but I do need to prompt or label student major. And again, I'm going to use a tab for spacing, 5 characters there. It is part of the string. Then the insertion operator and major, which will print the contents of the variable major. And again, a single space between major and the label here for my GPA. So next comes the label. This is the student GPA. And the contents of the variable GPA. And then I need a line feed, and then I'm going to put another one so that the press any key to continue is on a separate line. So that finishes my output, and I need to remember to do a return 0 to end my function, although it could be return any integer, and then close the braces. So I'm finished with my code, so the next thing I need to do is actually build or compile it to make sure that I don't have any syntax errors. And when it's finished, down at the very bottom of the screen, it'll tell me if my build has succeeded, which it has. So now I'm ready to run it. So I'm going to start without debugging, or Control F5 is the shortcut key for that, and it wants me to enter my first name, and I press enter, then enter the last name, and it reads until I press the enter key. Enter the major. My major is CIS. And then enter my GPA. I'll give myself a 3.8. When I press enter, then the output statements will execute with the appropriate spacing. The tab character that I used here, and giving me 5 blanks, and then a single space between first and last name, and also between CIS and student GPA there. So I can close the window or press any key to continue, and that's the end of this particular video.